to give everyone the opportunity to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. Unfortunately, many believe that in order to be happy, they need to accumulate more money than they could ever possibly spend in a lifetime. But this is called greed. There are over 400 people in the United States worth over $1 billion. That means one person can buy the entire state of Nebraska. Top 100 executive salaries range from $17 to $85 million a year. In 1980, CEO pay was 42 times the pay of the blue-collar worker on the factory floor. In 2010, it was 343 times the average blue-collar worker. The Wall Street Journal said last year CEO salaries were up 11%, while everyone else's salary was going down. Social mobility is the opportunity to accumulate wealth and rise in society. America used to lead the world in social mobility. The number one factor now to becoming wealthy is to be born into a wealthy family. The United States is now behind the Ivory Coast in terms of social mobility. Most of the ultra-wealthy pay less in taxes than you or I. The consequences of allowing this concentration of wealth are political consequences, environmental consequences, and it limits our sense of social justice. The political consequences are that very few individuals have the ability to influence the outcomes of our political elections. The last presidential election spent $1 billion between all the candidates. There are numerous examples of political ads which were outright lies, and most of us don't have the time or the motivation to fact check everything we hear in a political campaign. So it's very easy to envision that one or two individuals could spend $500 million to sway the outcome of a political election. In 1999, Congress repealed the Glass-Steagall Act. Does anyone know what that is? Glass-Steagall.
Yeah.
It was an act that was passed during the Great Depression to regulate Wall Street and limit the powers of corporations. 8 years after they repealed that law, we had a huge financial crash caused essentially by greed on Wall Street. In 2010, the Supreme Court voted to allow corporations to give unlimited amounts of money to political candidates. Did our founding fathers establish a government by the people, for the people? Or did they establish a government by the politicians, for the wealthy? Will this ruling make our government more representative of the average middle-class citizen? Is it possible that a greedy person would want to influence an election to get their friend into office who is more likely to pass laws to help them accumulate more wealth? What are the environmental consequences? There is a financial incentive for corporations to pollute. Corporate executive salaries are related to the profitability of the company. If a pollution control system costs 10% of the annual profits of the company, the executive is going to see that as, if I buy this pollution control system, I'm cutting my pay by 10%. Continuing to pollute puts more money into the company, more money into the pockets of the people making the decisions on whether or not to pollute. Without strong government regulations and fines to make clean emissions the less expensive choice, many highly paid executives are going to continue to choose to pollute. Is it possible that a greedy person would choose to pollute instead of choosing protecting the environment, which we all share? The social consequences are that many people are stuck in poverty. How many humans never get to reach their full potential simply from being born into a poor family? Even in the U.S., there are people who don't have access to clean water, nutritious food, and health care. Most violent criminals come from this environment of poverty. And with the exception of the privatized incarceration industry, very few people benefit from crime. Charity is not a real solution to poverty because it only helps with the symptoms. It doesn't deal with the real foundation of the problem. The ultra-wealthy can use charity to maintain control of vast amounts of resources and use their charity as a distraction from the fact that they're not really helping the problem. Humility, kindness, abstinence, chastity, patience, liberality, and diligence. These are the virtues which work in opposition to the 7 sins. Humility heals pride. Patience prevents anger. Liberality lessens greed. Unfortunately, the temptation of greed is too strong for many to resist, and it only takes a handful to wield their wealth in a way that benefits the minority at the expense of the majority. The government has the power to solve these issues, but they don't. They can stop the cycle of money which allows the wealth to trickle up into the hands of a small minority, but they don't. They can create and enforce environmental regulations to protect our shared resources, but they don't. They can divert resources to the poor to break the cycle of poverty, but they don't. Politicians are afraid to stand up to big money.